And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, October 18th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by BetMGM, and we are back. The NBA is here. Finally, I have been waiting desperately for this for multiple months. Couldn't be happier to be here. Process show is in the books, contenders in the books, but now we're here for the gold standard, the NBA Strategy Show. Hit that like button if you haven't done it already. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how are you feeling about the NBA?
Good. I'm excited. Always nice to start a new sport, but always enjoy NBA in particular. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Kind of wish that we had like a bigger slate right out of the gate, but at the same time, already dreading tomorrow. So, kind of wish we were getting like an 8 and a 6 instead of like a 2 and a 12. But it's nice to get back to it.
The only part of switching to the NBA coming out of, we'll say baseball, because NFL is different because you just don't have the same sort of time commitment, is that it takes so much more to prep an NBA slate than it does a baseball slate. You forget about it. Yeah, you forget about it. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, I got to do like an exceptional amount of work here. But then you get to Fantasy Cruncher and you're like, oh nice, it moves faster.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I already pretty much realized that I just will not be seeing other people until April.
Yeah, it's the best, right? Knowing that you just don't have to deal with any other bullshit in your life. It's probably the reason that I like this the most. It's just like, sorry, I got to be around at 1:30 p.m. for potential questionable news on the injury report. It's the best part of it. It's a full-time dedication. I'm just pumped to watch basketball again, too. 2 games tonight are wildly interesting for very different reasons. Sixers-Celtics will be the first game up, and I desperately just want to see that from a basketball perspective. I think that's very clearly 2 of the top 3 teams, depending on what you think about the Nets in the East. And then you get this Lakers team taking on the defending champ Warriors, coming off of the Draymond punching Jordan Poole issue. Just a wild night of basketball.
Yeah, it is nice for sure that they're starting with like 2 games that I actually want to watch.
Yeah. It is. I mean, like, I could still picture watching that opening night game with Gordon Hayward breaking his ankle and just being like, oh, cool, I don't want to watch any more of this. Maybe Draymond will break Jordan Poole's face.
Yeah, I remember watching that and then rewatching it with the sound up and
that one turned my stomach. Just like, it was the way that the entire arena reacted to it that like really tripped me out. It was gross. Just so gross. How did football go for you last night?
Didn't go well. I kind of knew going. What'd you say?
Not enough kickers?
Not enough kickers, not enough Dulcich, which that was the one that pissed me off because I knew going in, I was just like, I think I need to be projecting him higher than he is. But then I didn't. And so I ended up like, he was, 12, 13% owned. Hinton was like a third of that. So I ended up with a lot more Hinton than Dulcich. And like, he only caught 2 passes, but one of them happened to be a 30-yard touchdown. So that hurt pretty badly. So gave back a decent amount of what I made on Sunday.
Well, it is time for us to talk a little bit about the NBA. So if you're here, please hit the like button. It helps us out a ton. We'll talk about BetMGM in a bit and the schedule that we've got coming up and the lovely promo code that we have for you guys if you want to get behind the paywall. But for now, we're going to start it off with the opener tonight. 7:30 tip-off, the Philadelphia 76ers at the Boston Celtics. Sixers are 2-point dogs, 216 total. The latter game, a little bit further apart from a line perspective, but 8 points higher in total. We're going to start with the Philadelphia 76ers, who I think are actually probably the easiest team to break down of the 4 teams that play today. We kind of know what we're getting out of Harden, Embiid, Harris, Maxey. PJ Tucker just simply fits into a power forward spot at this point and is not the type of guy that's going to be taking away from everybody else. But we got to start, I think, at the top here. Joel Embiid, 9,900 on DraftKings, 10,700 on FanDuel. For me, the very clear highest projected player for today and my favorite option that I can get to. How are you feeling about Embiid here against Boston? A Boston team with no Robert Williams, I might add.
Yeah, I was gonna say no Robert Williams, so that's obviously really nice. And yeah, he's the highest projected guy for me right now as well. He's the highest projected guy on Stokastic, I believe. 51 and a half DraftKings points. We have him in for 34 and a half minutes. That seems maybe a little bit aggressive for Embiid right out of the gate, but barring foul trouble, barring injury in a competitive game, I would expect him to get somewhere in that range,
Yeah.
low 30s. So just obviously a really, really good point per minute guy and not overly expensive here either at 9,900.
Now, 9,900 seems pretty manageable. To be fair, he is pulling 50% ownership on DraftKings and 48% on FanDuel. I'm still not having any trouble getting up and over that mark. Given what the other guys in that salary range are already pulling, he's not that crazily owned. And the gap that I just have, like I've got him with an 8-point gap on everybody on FanDuel. It was 6 earlier today. I did cut Curry a little bit, so it's probably somewhere in that neighborhood on DraftKings. Yeah, about 7 fantasy points ahead of Jason Tatum. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was, like a 1.5 to 1.6 fantasy point per minute guy last year. There's nobody else on the slate that's matching that. There's no
Yeah,
Giannis. There's no Jokic.
right, exactly. Yeah, he was at one point, I think it was 1.57 DraftKings points per minute last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you talk about the other pay up guys, obviously you have other players that have high ceilings like Jason Tatum, like Davis, like LeBron, but none of those guys, especially in the Lakers case where LeBron and Davis are both active, none of those guys average the same points per minute that Embiid does or anything close to it.
Then the guy that we probably need to talk about most is James Harden, who allegedly is in better shape coming into this year than he normally is, looking a little bit leaner than he normally is. Kind of a different guy. When he was in Philly last year, the usage came down from those astronomical levels you remembered from the Rockets teams. Still very involved from an assist perspective. Still there getting boards. More like a 1.25 fantasy point per minute guy now. 8,900 on DraftKings, 8,900 on FanDuel. I'm not really getting to all that much on DK. I think some of the guys that are around him look good, but I would not be surprised at all to see some sort of ceiling game out of Harden. How are you feeling about Harden here today?
Yeah, I mean, he played 21 games with Embiid active last year, averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute, 24.8% usage rate, but also a 41.1% assist percentage. So there's still a lot of upside for him, but on a per minute basis, you have him more in line with guys like Tatum and LeBron and Davis. So I think that it kind of comes down to ownership amongst those guys. Right now, we have Harden being a bit over-owned on DraftKings, 25% projected ownership, 20.6% chance of being optimal. So clearly still a good play. It's James Harden on a 2-game slate. He's going to be heavily involved one way or another, whether it's scoring or feeding Embiid. But he doesn't stand out as much relative to other options, I don't think, as Embiid does.
If you look at the Philadelphia 76ers today, we've already talked Embiid and Harden. Who does stand out to you? Is that Tobias Harris, who's pulling 30% ownership on DK? Is it my boy Tyrese Maxey at 5K? $1,500 cheaper than he is on FanDuel, by the way, pulling 45% ownership. Only other guy in double digits here is Tucker. I guess Maxey's the guy that we should talk about. I don't love that ownership. I know that every single day the Sixers played last year, I was probably like, hey, I really like Tyrese Maxey today. I got him at like 0.8 fantasy points per minute in this spot with all of these guys healthy. Is he a good play at 5K? Absolutely. That's a solid point per dollar option. 45% ownership seems pretty high.
Yeah, that's the same issue I'm having. Right now, like if you look at the boom bust tool, we have him being optimal 31% of the time. So he's in the optimal lineup 1/3 of the time, basically. That's obviously really good. But he's also projected for 45.5% ownership. And, we talk about it a lot in other sports that just because you're going over owned doesn't mean you're a bad play necessarily. But in NBA, it does get a little bit closer to that, I think, because in NBA, you typically are going to end up, like you actually are trying to make the optimal lineup pretty much, at least something.
Especially today.
Yeah, especially on a 2-gamer. On larger slates, you're not going to get the true optimal that often, but you have a lot less margin for error. Like NFL and MLB, you can have a couple guys in your lineup that just suck and you're still fine. My Yahoo lineup Sunday, they got third place on Yahoo had like Kyle Pitts and Debo. You can just afford to miss on a few spots. NBA, you really can't. And so that does sort of make him, I think, again, not that he's a bad play. Like I'm sure you can still make good lineups with him. He's still really useful at that price. But it is noteworthy that he's going quite a bit over owned. He played 21 games with both Embiid and Harden last season, and he still had some big games in there because you were getting some really efficient shooting at times, and I remember it being a talking point because you might have still been playing him. I was not playing him at all, and he just kept going out there and throwing out these huge games, and people were like making the case that he's getting open looks, so he's going to be better now that Harden's there. And it's like, no, he's going to be more efficient, but over a larger sample, you're not just going to have him just out there averaging a fantasy point per game, sharing the ball with Harden and Embiid. He only had an 18.7% usage rate. His assist percentage was at 16.2% in those games, averaged 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. So I do think he is too cheap here, but a lot's just going to come down to like how efficient can he be?
Right. I'm betting on that efficiency. He was great last year. I think that's going to continue. And you should be efficient if you have James Harden and Joel Embiid on the team. Like, you're just naturally going to get better looks than before. So reduce usage, increased efficiency. Do I like Maxey? Yeah, at 5K, you can't really get away from him. That ownership is something to pay attention to. 6,500 on FanDuel, that's a tough sell, especially at 30% ownership. You're talking about needing 40 plus out of Maxey today. That's a difficult salary to pay off.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one thing if the ownership had really come down, and I mean it drops from 45% to 31, but his optimal percentage on FanDuel also drops from 31% to 20%. So it's just one of those spots where I think he's underpriced, but looking at ownership right now, it's likely that I just don't get to the field, and then I end up being really pissed off when he shoots 6 for 7 from 3.
Are there any other DK or FanDuel plays that stand out to you from Philly? Because I think the rest of their rotation starts to get problematic. Once you know that Harden, Embiid, Harris, Maxey, you're locking those guys into, let's just say 34 minutes, but even if you want to say 32, PJ Tucker's going to play, 28, 30, 32, something in that neighborhood. You just don't have a lot more to go around if these guys are going to run a 10-man rotation. You can only give so many minutes then to DeAnthony Melton, to Daniel House, to George Niang. Unless they're running a non-10-man rotation, I'm going to have a lot of trouble getting to any other pieces from the Sixers outside of Melton. 4,200 on FanDuel's pulling a little bit of ownership. I can see why it's happening. Otherwise, I think you really need to focus on basically the starters.
I mean, yeah, I agree. That's where you want to focus. With it being a 2-game slate, I do think that in particular Tucker and Melton deserve mentions just because they are likely to be in the rotation, playing sizable minutes. Tucker probably plays more minutes. We also know he's not the best point per minute guy. Melton to me is really interesting. He's getting 3% ownership, 4% ownership on DraftKings at 4,200. If this game plays out perfectly according to script, he probably isn't anything special. He probably plays 16 minutes, give or take, but he is a good point per minute guy. And if anything weird happens, whether it's Harden foul trouble, Maxey foul trouble, Maxey rolling an ankle, like if anything weird happens, at least with somebody like DeAnthony Melton, if he's on the floor, he's producing. And so that on a 2-game slate at low ownership is interesting to me, even though I don't think he projects all that well for his salary.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get to much as I look at like the rest of this Sixers team. I don't think the center situation is going to matter all that much. Although it can, if you think the backup is Paul Reed, things are interesting for the Sixers.
Because
if you think he's
3K flat.
Yes. If you think he's splitting it, if Montrezl Harrell sees the floor at all, it's going to be barring an Embiid injury. I don't really think going to either one of the centers is going to be valid. But if Paul Reed is just simply a 14-minute backup to Joel Embiid or a 16-minute backup to Joel Embiid, there's something there at 3K.
So what do you think is more likely?
I don't have a clue who the backup's going to be. I mean, you could tell me that the backup's PJ Tucker, and I'd believe that too. Like, they have so many options to run out there as the backup center. To me, everything that I've seen, like, I've been leaning more towards Paul Reed, but I also don't think that Montrezl Harrell is coming here and just getting like DNP'd regularly. Like, he's a Doc guy. Doc had him in LA. Probably the reason that he didn't get to stay in LA, if we're being honest, probably went to that pick and roll combo a little bit too much. But like, you can't get to Harrell at 4,600 or 4,300 on FanDuel. To me, that's impossible. Reed would be the only guy on DraftKings. It's the type of guy where if you're playing the large field 200,000 person contest today, like, that's one of those spots where if you want to take a stand and hope you're right, that's the way that you don't get duped to win it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And I'm with you. Like, I'd be surprised if Harrell's not in the rotation. Like, why would he be on this team?
Yeah.
Like why did he come there? So yeah, I'm with you. It's just I do look at that spot and it's just like, sure, I think the correct way to project it is what we did, where we have like, 7 minutes going to each guy, but that could easily be 14 for either of them.
Oh, without question. And that's sort of where I'm at right now. We'll see how well that works out. But for now, nothing too crazy. The guy that I'm getting to most is Embiid. I wouldn't say that I have any other major priority, at least not on the DraftKings side. Tucker for 4,100 on FanDuel just works as a value option. Would be happy to get there at 3,700 on DK. A little surprised, honestly, to see Tucker's ownership only be 14% on DraftKings.
I think Golden State probably impacting that a bit, since we're expecting them to just be running a pretty flat rotation.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. Anything else you want to touch on for the Sixers?
Nope.
All righty, guys. First of all, 530 people here, 94 likes. That's not going to get it done. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done it. It's the first day of the NBA season. It should be very easy for you guys to reward us with a like button hit for the video. Costs you guys nothing. And we should be excited for basketball being back. NFL Strategy Show First Look Edition coming up at 11 a.m. So right after this one. PGA Strategy then at 1 p.m. NHL Strategy Show at 2 p.m. We're checking off everything. NBA, NFL, PGA, and NHL all by 2 o'clock. Adam and I will be back at 5:30 for the deeper dive. And then live before lock at 6:30, all the way up till 8 o'clock. So you get the extra half hour. No limit to the amount of content we're putting out today. We go to Boston now. As we mentioned, out of the gate, no Robert Williams in this one. He's going to be out for a bit to start the season. I think we can be pretty quick talking about Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown. Tatum, 9K on DraftKings. Jalen Brown, 8K on DraftKings. Jason Tatum on FanDuel is 9,800. Jalen Brown keeps that same 8K price tag. So I like Jalen Brown a lot more on FanDuel in comparison to him and Tatum. But do you see either one of those guys just stepping in front of the other for you here? Do you have a preference between the two on DK? I like them both pretty much equally. I like the lighter ownership on Brown.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at as well. Tatum clearly is going to project better because he's Tatum, but you also get the nice salary discount, and Jalen Brown still gives you a really high ceiling. Like, you're going to have those games where Jalen Brown just steps in and takes over. He's still a really good player. Looking at the boom bust tool, so you can compare, ownership, Tatum pulling 45%, Brown pulling 35%, Brown about a 34% chance of being optimal, Tatum around 44%. So no real advantage there, I don't think. They're both pretty much just projected to be owned correctly. So yeah. I think really for me, it just comes down to within individual lineups, do you need a, guard? Like, Brown fits in the lineups a little bit easier because he has guard and forward eligibility as opposed to small forward and power forward. But I think a lot of it's just going to come down to, like, do you need the 8K guy or can you get up to the 9K guy?
Yeah. I'm loving this Boston team today just because of how set in stone I think their rotation is for the guys that matter. You're going to be playing a bunch of Jason Tatum. You're going to be playing a bunch of Jalen Brown, sort of by default. Now, I don't like Tatum nearly as much on FanDuel because $1,800 more than Brown is just a big gap. We have them at the same ownership, Tatum and Brown on FanDuel, $1,800 salary difference. It's just easier to get to Jalen Brown than if they're the same ownership. Marcus Smart, seems appropriately owned, 5,200 on DK, 5,900 on FanDuel. Al Horford is sub 5K on DK, power forward center eligibility, projected for 54% ownership. Al Horford, the highest owned Boston guy. I think it makes sense when you look at his salary. Don't know if I want Al Horford in half of my lineups in this particular spot.
I mean, he's really productive without Robert Williams, too, is the thing.
Yeah.
18 games played without Williams last year, 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, 30.1 minutes per game, 14% usage, 14.8% rebounding percentage, 18.2% assist percentage. Just gets it done across the board when he doesn't have to contend with Robert Williams for production inside. So I do think he looks really good. Obviously, that ownership number is pretty high, but we do also have him nearly 50% to be optimal.
Yeah, look, I totally agree that he looks good. That just felt like a really big number on Horford.
Like, the way things I
guess they don't have a choice.
The way things look right now, I think it's a little bit easier to eat the ownership on Al Horford than it is Tyrese Maxey.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. The only thing I'm really worried about for Horford is some sort of foul trouble.
Sure.
But, that's not the way that I'm approaching this. I gave him 30 minutes. Happy to get to any Al Horford. He is 6K on FanDuel, so I'm certainly going to be lighter. Like 42% ownership on 6K Al Horford on FanDuel. That's too much for me.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Like we're talking about a boom score, like a target for his boom there is 40. That feels like a really big Al Horford day in game one to pay off
Right.
at 6K. Still, you're getting to him for sure. I'm going to be well light on the FanDuel side. And then we get to the weird piece. Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon. I don't know what to do with these two guys. Tatum, Brown, Smart, Horford. I think it's pretty much set in stone that 4 of those 5 guys are closing. The question then becomes, who closes? Is it White? Is it Brogdon? Are those guys bouncing back and forth depending on if they need offense or defense? I kind of have them for the same amount of minutes. I think they look pretty similar. They're projected for comparable ownership on the DraftKings side. Very different on FanDuel because Brogdon's price is stupid. But what do you want to do with Derek White and Brogdon?
I don't really know. So the thing is, too, their ownership's coming in about the same. And that's the spot where I was sort of hoping that we would get a situation where we could just do the opposite of what the field was doing. I think that they are similar enough where, if you were going to have, if the field was projected to just really want Malcolm Brogdon, then sure, I'll take Derek White and vice versa. But we have White projected for 35% ownership. We have Brogdon at 34%. Brogdon being optimal 30%, White 34%. So to me, it kind of just looks like the Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum situation where I'm happy to get to either one. Where I can afford Brogdon, I'll probably go there. If I can't get to him, I have no issue going to Derek White. I think this is a spot kind of similar to the Paul Reed, Montrezl Harrell spot. Obviously you're talking about more combined minutes by a lot, but kind of similar just to where a week or two from now, we might look back and we should have a lot more clarity on exactly what we expect Boston to do with these guys down the stretch of competitive games. And, does it depend on if they're winning or if they're losing? But right now, it's just kind of like 2 very similar players. They're both good. They both could conceivably be who they want to go to down the stretch of games. And right now, I just don't really think we know.
Yeah, I think it's just a game script thing. If they're behind, you go to more Brogdon because you're trying to get more scoring on the floor. If you're ahead, you're probably going to Derek White for a little bit more defense. It's just who the hell? It's a coin flip game. Who the hell knows how that's actually going to shake out? Right. I expect to get both of them in the fourth quarter, just rotating in and out.
Yeah, I was gonna say because the thing is, it's not like this is a situation where Brogdon is just like purely an offensive guy and White's purely a defensive guy. White can get enough, he can do enough offensively, and Brogdon's good enough defensively that it doesn't need to be like a set in stone. We're going to this guy. So I do think there's just a lot of volatility here.
Only other guy that I think that we could touch on is Grant Williams. Did not sign an extension yesterday, which was interesting. 3,900 for Grant Williams on DK. Small forward, power forward eligibility. He's 4,600 on FanDuel, only power forward. A lot more difficult to get to there. But if Grant Williams is 8% owned on DraftKings, I think that he's one of the more interesting value plays that we can get to.
I don't really understand why I don't understand why he's getting like half the ownership of PJ Tucker. Aren't they kind of the same thing?
They're they're both like 0.6 something fantasy point per minute dudes with playing similar like minutes. Yeah. So, I'm with that's the easy, like quick pivot.
Right. So yeah, it's not that like I love Grant Williams or I'm really excited to just be jamming in Grant Williams here, but it's just an easy spot, I think, where like if PJ Tucker is going to pull 15% and Williams is going to pull 8%, I'll just play more Grant Williams instead of PJ Tucker.
And I just don't. When there's no Robert Williams here, there's just not enough there's not enough guys behind Grant Williams that are going to like truly have a chance to cut into his minutes. I can't imagine wanting to go to Blake. I've got Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard both in at minimal minutes. Like I think Grant Williams has to play 24 plus.
If Al Horford gets in foul trouble, what do they do? Like Blake and Cornette?
Cobb and Gale?
I mean, well, because my thinking was like, if you had a smaller opponent, I'd be really confident that Al Horford foul trouble means Grant Williams minutes. Yeah. Here, I'm not as confident, but also when you look down the list, it's just like you don't have a good solution. So are you going to be better just going with that small lineup and throwing Williams in there and hoping that he's knocking down wide open threes?
I assume Cornette eats like 2 or 3 fouls in that scenario if he has to. But yeah, like I just don't see a way where Grant Williams ends up limited. Like they're not going to go to Noah Vonleh to try to guard Embiid here. I think it just becomes Grant Williams minutes to lose.
Right, because there's not a better option. Like you obviously have bigger guys that you can throw out there, but you don't have one where you're just like, oh yeah, this guy's going to come in and slow down Embiid. Like you're probably better off just saying, all right, screw it, we don't have a center until Horford gets back in the game.
No justification for Blake or Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard, correct?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, if you wanted to justify it, it would be it's a 2-game slate, it's opening night, maybe something really weird happens, but I don't really know how I would get there.
Yeah, to me, Boston's the easiest team to look at and be like, all right, there's a chunk of guys that are going to play, and then you just draw a line under it. You get those first 7, and all of a sudden you just quit. Like you can't go to anybody else.
Is Horford really that much better of a play than Tucker or Williams? Yes.
Yeah. It's
Horford,
not close.
Yeah, Horford's over a fantasy point per minute guy, likely to play around 30 minutes. So if he's able to avoid foul trouble, injury, all of that, you're expecting Horford to play anywhere from like 4 to 8 minutes, probably more than Tucker and Williams, and produce around 0.4 fantasy points per minute more than them. So it's not particularly close.
Like, even if you want to take, like, I've got a relatively pessimistic projection on Horford. I got him at 0.9 for the game. That's still not even comparable to Grant Williams and PJ. We're talking 0.25 to 0.3, even in like the most pessimistic sense that you want to do this. We can't even compare those things. Josh hates Philly so much, it's sad. Not only did I lose a bet where I took the Sixers and ended up with a mustache, I have an active bet on the Sixers for this season. It's insane how much I end up being behind Philly. Every time Greg posts a question to Twitter of like, well, what of these odds look bad? It's like, well, I think it's Embiid. Oh, I think it's somebody else. I keep picking Sixers for everything. I love the Sixers because Daryl Morey follows me on Twitter. So right. They're my favorite team in the world now. Shout out Daryl Morey.
I was so mad when he followed you also.
I was so happy when he followed me.
And also to clarify this in chat, Grant Williams is a good basketball player. He's not a good DFS player.
Yeah. He's like a 60-something% true shooting dude. Like he is ultra efficient on offense. Not everybody's out there creating their own shot, guys.
Yeah. And he can defend multiple positions.
Yes, he can. Josh, when we get in that tattoo, trust me, man, I've tried. I've gone to tattoo parlors in Wilmington. I've gone to we've called tattoo parlors in Chicago. Nobody wants to give me this damn tattoo, man.
Oh, so you've had other places say they won't do it?
I went in. We were out one day, and there was like a tattoo parlor next to a bar, and I was just like, I'm just going to pop in here and see if they would do it. And they were like, no, not interested. All right. So I just need to find somebody, like a friend of a friend that is a tattoo artist that will just do it because of, connections. Right. Because it doesn't seem like any general tattoo parlor will take me. Anyway, who cares about tattoos when you have BetMGM offers out there for you? This one, absolute no-brainer. I said this on the Process Show. I'm going to say it here. You see Kevin Garnett on the banner of this one. You don't want to piss him off. You better listen to what I've got to say here. Kevin Garnett will hunt everyone down if you do not do this one. Link in the description for BetMGM. Click it. Head on over. Now, you got to be in a legal state. Let's just put that there. And you got to be new to BetMGM. Make a deposit. Put in a $10 bet on any pregame money line for tonight. You're going to get $200 in free bets so long as someone makes a three-pointer. If no one makes a three tonight, I assume the world ended. You're not going to be all that worried about that $10 that you put into that BetMGM bet. You're going to get $200 in free bets from BetMGM as long as you do what I just said. This isn't going to work for you in New York, Pennsylvania, Mississippi, or Ontario. I know those final two are a little bit weird, but what I got to tell you, those are the terms here. $10 gets you $200 in free bets at BetMGM. Follow that link in the description. And don't piss off KG.
I think I agree with chat. You need to just go to jail.
Who needs to go to jail?
You, so you can get your tattoo.
Oh, that's an interesting stretch. I wouldn't do well in jail.
So the reason they won't do it is just they don't want to do lip tattoos?
Evidently, yeah. And the way that they described it at the one that I went to in Wilmington was that like you can't stand by your work as much because it fades so quickly. Okay. Which I thought was like a pretty like yes but no type reasoning. I'd rather them just be like, I don't want to be in your fucking mouth.
Right. I mean, I get it from like like I get it, but also that should just be easily solved with money.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I feel like if you ask the tattoo artist and I was like, yeah, I'll give you $150 for this, then
Right.
you just got to put Splash Bros on my lip for 10 minutes. All of them are going to be like, yeah, I'll give me the cash.
Right. Like it should just be like, what would this normally cost? And then you say, okay, well, I'll add 100
Yeah.
because it's going to look like shit in 2 weeks and you're not going to be able to like, promote it.
Yeah. If
Like,
the equivalent, if that on my arm is $30, I'm happy to pay you guys more to handle this situation.
right. Like there should absolutely be, if it's just simply we can't stand by our work thing, there should just be a dollar amount that solves that.
And I'm sure there is. I wasn't exactly like on that day. I wasn't exactly like, how much do I need to make this happen?
Right.
Like I wasn't trying to barter. I was just curious. I was just kind of hoping he'd say yeah. Anyway, let's get into game number 2. Lakers 7-point dogs in Golden State. We're going to start on the Lakers side where we have no Thomas Bryant. He is out. We have no Dennis Schroeder, out for a while now. And we have what looks like Russell Westbrook coming off of the bench today. This team is hard as hell to break down. We'll start pretty quickly with AD and LeBron. 8,500 on DraftKings for Anthony Davis, 9,200 for LeBron. They are 10-1 and 10-8 respectively on FanDuel. I'm not surprised by this. This happens pretty regularly. We've got LeBron at 53% ownership. He's 40% owned on FanDuel. I'm essentially not getting to LeBron on FanDuel. I'm getting to very minimal amounts on DK. Do I think he's good? Could he blast a $9,200 ceiling? Yes. I just have Embiid so much higher projected than these guys that it's so hard to get a second guy, especially when you have 2 stars like AD and LeBron. I'd rather get to AD because of the price. What are you doing with these 2 guys?
I mean, I think they both look pretty good just because they're so cheap. And one thing that does make me like them is actually looking back to opening day last year. Anthony Davis played 39 minutes. LeBron played 37 minutes. I mean, there's a reasonable chance that if they played those same minutes, that you're talking 7 and 9 minutes more than Embiid, which, is huge. So that, I mean, obviously the pricing being really cheap, but then also just that, they played them so much right out of the gate last year. They, in their second to last preseason game this year, they played like 25 and 27 minutes. So I don't think it's unrealistic to think that they're just playing full minutes right out of the gate here. And whether it be foul trouble or just Philadelphia being cautious with Embiid like they tend to, you could just so easily see, 5, 6, 7 more minutes for these guys. So I still like Embiid projects higher. I like him more, but I think I'm just also higher on LeBron and Davis in general than you are.
On FanDuel for 10-8 on LeBron, like that one I'm having a lot of trouble getting to, just given some of the pricing around there. It'd be way more viable on DraftKings at 9,200. Like that's just a price tag where LeBron needs 56 to hit his boom. That's nothing insane at all. I just lean more towards AD. Like they're very, very comparable per minute guys. $700 is a lot. And then we get to Russ. 7,400 on DK, 3% owned, 7K on FanDuel, 15% owned. Should we be doing this today at that ownership?
It's kind of tempting at the low ownership.
It is, right? Like I got to 15% on DraftKings, given him being 3. I love that. Like that's not me taking a giant stand, but it's certainly better than 3%. I'm taking a much bigger stand on FanDuel right now. It might be Russ season for me, I hate it.
So here's the thing, and I don't know that I actually get there. I like the idea of him at low ownership because even last year, like obviously sucked in a variety of ways. Still averaged over a fantasy point per minute in the games he played with Davis and LeBron. Any minutes without them on the floor, you expect him to be more productive. The issue, I think, is that his salary didn't really move relative to other players. Like if you want to make Joel Embiid 11K and LeBron 10.5 and Davis 10.3, and then you tell me Westbrook 7,400, I'm kind of interested in gambling on him at very low ownership. Yeah. When he's 7,400 and I only have to find $1,100 to get to Anthony Davis or less than $2,000 to get to LeBron James, and that's not even to mention, the guys we already talked about on Boston, it just becomes so difficult for, say, 24 to 26 minutes of Russell Westbrook to be what you actually want.
The interesting piece for me here is that I think he's going to be self-fulfilling. If Russ is playing well, he's going to close the game and get more minutes than anybody's expecting. They're not going to, if it's going well for him, they're not going to be able to not play him in crunch time.
So I agree with that, but, and it kind of comes back to like the pricing issue that I'm having. Let's say Westbrook does play 32 minutes. He's still like not nearly as good at 7,400 as Davis and LeBron are at their respective salaries.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're still looking, the boom score is 47 on DK. It's 45 on FanDuel. That's a tough sell. Like, I don't think that's particularly likely. 3% owned Russ, like that just seems too low.
Yeah, it's the way that I see it right now, like, and I mean, I haven't built lineups, but my expectation is that he's going to be at an ownership level where if he has a big game, I'm just going to be looking back and being like, that was the most obvious play. Like, why didn't you do it? You're an idiot. But I also don't think I'm going to do it.
Okay. Now let's get to what I think is the hardest thing to do right now. Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn, Lonnie Walker, Austin Reeves. 34, 39, 26, and 27% owned right now. They're 4,300. Kendrick Nunn is the flat 3K today for reasons. Lonnie Walker is 4,200. Reeves is 3,400. When you start looking at the rest of these guys, because AD is going to close, LeBron's going to close, and then I assume Beverly closes no matter what. I have no feel for this team. What do you want to do with the excess garbage from the Lakers? Because you kind of got to play all of them.
Yeah, like they're all cheap. They all project relatively well. We only have Beverly projected for 34% ownership compared to 40% for Nunn. We have Beverly being optimal like 53.5% of the time, 30.8% for Nunn. Reeves looks good as well, pulling 27% ownership, 29% chance of being optimal. In their more or less dress rehearsal 2 games ago, where Davis played 27, LeBron played 25, Westbrook played 25. You got 27 from Beverly. You got 24 from Reeves. You got 19 from Nunn. Schroeder was in and played 9. But, I mean, I'm expecting pretty similar minutes from these guys to each other.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to close. And that's, like, getting that right is everything here. If you get the closers right, you're going to feel good. But one of these guys is probably going to play, like, 19 minutes and you don't see it coming, and another's going to play 30 and you might not.
Well, and it goes back to what you're saying about Russ. I think a lot of it's just going to be like, one, how is the game going? But 2, how are they playing individually? Basically, when you talk about Beverly, Westbrook, Walker, Reeves, Nunn, like any of these guys, I think can just play their way into the closing lineup.
It's part of the reason I like Lonnie Walker and Reeves a little bit more is because I think that no matter how this game goes, they're the most likely to be out there if it goes poorly for the Lakers.
Sure.
Like they don't have the same sort of competition where, like, if they're getting blown out, I think Austin Reeves might just be out there no matter what. Whereas I don't think that they're just going to Kendrick Nunn, but I also don't have a great feel. I've got a little bit of all of these guys on FanDuel. Pat Bev's 4,900. So he's a little bit higher in price. Austin Reeves is still only at that $3,900 mark. The guy that I'm getting to most is Kendrick Nunn, and Kendrick Nunn being flat minimum on DK. Look, you're playing him in cash, and I assume you're playing him in cash. He just, like, that's a price tag. It's really hard for him to fail.
Yeah, completely incorrect price tag at 3K.
He's 4,300 on FanDuel. I still kind of like him because he's limited in ownership at 22%. Way too much of the Lakers coming in for me that aren't AD and LeBron, and that's just like the scariest thing in the world. But I also think the team is ass, so I don't feel too bad about it. Do you want my sneak play of the day?
Damian Jones?
Yep.
Yeah.
3,500.
Solely because he's facing his former team, right?
Yes, exactly. But 3,500, 8% owned. We're going to talk about Kevon Looney on the opposite side in this game. Similarly set up from a minutes perspective. Very different in ownership. I think that Damian Jones, if there's any foul trouble at all to AD, Damian Jones is the guy that's soaking that up. There is no Thomas Bryant to make this question harder. Damian Jones is like another one of those sneaky, this could get you somewhere if it breaks correctly for you guys.
And then you also get some equity there because you could just get Anthony Davis saying, F you, I'm not playing the center all game.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want to. It's opening night. Like I would throw Damian Jones almost in that mix of, like, just depending how he's playing and how the game is going. Should it surprise anybody if the closing lineup has Davis and Jones?
No, I don't think so at all. Like a little bit, but like
Like, it's not the most expected
He's not
outcome.
that much worse than Kendrick Nunn or Lonnie Walker or
Right.
Austin
Like, it's
Reeves.
not. If I'm making an even money bet on is Damian Jones in the closing lineup, my answer is no. But like, does it blow anyone's mind if he just outplays Kendrick Nunn in a given game or what? Like, they have enough positional flexibility that it doesn't matter. Those guys aren't the same position. You're going to have the ball in LeBron's hands. Davis, the offense is going to be running through Davis. It doesn't really matter to a huge extent if it's Damian Jones or Kendrick Nunn out there. You can still make it work.
Maybe they want to corner the market on rebounding, and that's their path to victory here. And they want to go big when the Warriors don't. I have no idea. Juan Toscano Anderson, Wenyen Gabriel, the only other two guys that I gave any minutes. I don't think either one of them are worth much of a discussion. This is a tricky team because of Russ. Just in case anybody's looking, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook all listed as probable on the injury report. So I'm not paying attention to the Lakers for anything in that way.
No, and they said Davis wouldn't be limited either, which is certainly a good indication that he is playing.
Yeah, and it's also a certain indication that he will ultimately be limited.
Yep.
Is there anything else that we're missing here on the Lakers side?
No. I'm with you on Damian Jones. That was the one that I was definitely going to mention. Toscano Anderson at 3,100, like, I guess has some path to getting there, but I don't think it's particularly likely.
No, I don't even know what would have to happen for that one to like really break well.
He would just have to be ahead of guys in the rotation that we don't expect him to be ahead of.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even necessarily know if he's ahead of Wenyen Gabriel. So
right. Yeah.
Like that's when it gets really squirrely. All righty. 800. Ooh, wow. Go ahead.
In the dress rehearsal type preseason game, Toscano Anderson was a DNP CD. Gabriel played 8 minutes.
Okay. 830 people are in here right now watching the NBA strategy show. First day back. Feels good. 218 likes. You guys are asleep at the wheel. Hit that thumbs up. We should be over 300 easy right now. And here's the reward. This is what I'm looking for. You give me a thumbs up. I'm giving you hardwood. One big word, all caps, hardwood. $10 for 10 days of Stokastic plus platinum. It covers everything we have. NBA. So you get projections, ownership, boom bust, all that good stuff. You get NHL, NFL, PGA, MMA, all of this stuff. Behind the paywall, you get access to it. $10 for 10 days, including our lineup generator. Awesome new tool that we've rolled out. We started to see it for the NFL. We started to see it a little bit towards this season, but now we have it for basketball. If you go to the tools section of Stokastic, you click on NBA lineup generator. Right now, it's just DraftKings. FanDuel will be here shortly. This will generate lineups for you, whether you want them to be chalky, balanced, contrarian. If you like it, you can click save. If you don't like it, click discard. Flip it on over. You're just going to get a steady stream of lineups in front of your face. They're just there for you. Over and over and over again, generated. It'll let you know how high that projection is. If you're in a huge contest, you want to be contrarian, you'll go contrarian. If you're in a small, like 100-person single entry or something, you can go a little bit chalkier. The lineup generator tool is fantastic. I think you guys are going to love using it. I think you guys really need to check it out. Again, at stokastic.com. It is there for you. What are we seeing here? Who's playing more minutes? What am I missing?
Juan Toscano Anderson is ahead of both Wenyen Gabriel and Damian Jones in the rotation.
Yeah, that's not true. Could
like
be
Gabriel,
ahead of
possibly,
sure.
I guess.
Yeah.
But
absolutely not ahead of Damian Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if Damian Jones started today.
Right. I was thinking that when we were talking. It was like there's a non-zero chance that Davis just starts at the 4.
Yeah. So there's also that. We close it out with the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, they've been in the news lately. We had Steve Kerr say yesterday that the starters, or the main guys, aren't ready for 30 plus minutes. How much do you want to take that into account?
So they kind of did the same thing last year. The only guy that played more than 30 minutes opening night, Steph played 36. Everybody else was sub 30. Okay. So I believe Steve Kerr. Also, anytime Steve Kerr has an excuse to run a ridiculous rotation with as many bodies as possible, I completely trust him to make it happen. He just loves doing that.
So would you be looking at something like 32 Curry, 30 Wiggins, 30 Thompson, 30 Green, something like
Probably just
that? Or are you
going
going to
30
go even?
across the board.
Okay.
Yeah, Draymond played 30, Curry played 36, Wiggins played 26, Poole played 25, Looney played 15, Damian Lee played 29 off the bench, Iggy played 23, Bjelica played 26.
Iggy out, by the way, today, just in case anybody cares.
Yeah, I was just throwing out like what
Yeah.
people did last year.
Oh yeah. I knew that I saw it on the injury report this morning, so wanted to make sure I got that out there. Okay. Well, then let's talk about these guys. How do you feel about? Let's talk the core four: Curry, Wiggins, Green, Clay, since they are going to be what I would expect to be 4 of the 5 starters. No one's pulling all that much ownership on DraftKings. Curry in the teens, Wiggins in the teens, Thompson in the teens. The only guy that's still getting a ton of ownership would be Draymond Green at 5,800, coming fresh off that punch as what I think is the best play from the Golden State Warriors today.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. That's a lot of ownership for somebody that we're not expecting to play more than 30 minutes.
Oh yeah, like I don't know necessarily if I love the fact that he's 33% owned with what we know, but I think he is the best Golden State option.
Oh, okay, yeah, I agree with that. We have Clay going wildly underowned.
I have quite a bit of Clay right now on DraftKings and FanDuel. And not a guy, I got him in at 30 minutes, and he is not a guy that I typically get to.
Yeah, I don't typically get to him either. We have him 33% to be optimal, 16% ownership. I will say that I fully expect, like, if that's not like a glitch, like if those numbers hold, that ownership number is coming up. That's what we've seen across all sports, basically. People are good enough now that if there is actually a discrepancy that big, that ownership, people are just going to play him more.
You would think. That's what I'm doing right now at 16%. He's 24% owned on FanDuel. I'm getting to twice as much there. Can you justify Steph today? Other than, just Steph ceiling game is Steph ceiling game?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Steph just like he can certainly score 60 DraftKings points in 30 minutes, and you wouldn't really bat an eye.
It's really hard to compare him to anyone around him in salary and like him more.
Right.
Is where I'm at.
Yeah, especially because he's going to get some ownership.
Yeah.
It would be one thing if you were talking about 3% Steph like you are 3% Westbrook, then I think it's really easy to make that case. At 17%, that's probably about where he should be when you consider expected minutes restrictions and all of the options around him.
Yeah. I don't have much to say about Wiggins. I think he's appropriately owned. Again, when like guys like that are limited, it becomes really tough to want to go there. Let's talk about the guy that was on the receiving end of Draymond's punch, though. Jordan Poole, minutes restriction shouldn't matter to him at all. 6,700 on DK, 28% owned. 6K on FanDuel, 48% owned. For a while, I thought I was going to get to a bunch of Jordan Poole. I don't know if I'm going to now with the ownership here. How are you feeling about Poole?
What do you mean the minutes restriction shouldn't apply to him?
Well, if he's not starting, like him going north of 30 minutes is pretty difficult to begin with.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if you meant it like you were expecting him to play more than 30, or if you meant it like he is what he is.
No, I just like the most he was going to play if he's not starting is probably 30 minutes anyway. So
right. Okay.
He's just going to slot into where he was no matter what.
Yeah, I think he looks okay. I think he's going a little bit over-owned. We have him at 28% ownership, 21% chance of being optimal. It's just still like that's a pretty healthy price tag. On the pricing on this slate is just weird, and it makes it difficult for me to really like a lot of these guys in that price range because they're just close enough to the stars on the slate, and then they're 2x basically the salary of the value plays on the slate. It just becomes really difficult to get to a lot of that range, I think.
Well, let's get to the trickier parts here of Golden State. Who the hell is in the rest of this rotation, and who's going to play the minutes?
If Jonathan Kuminga is going to be 8% owned, I want Jonathan Kuminga.
He is 22% owned on FanDuel, where he's 4K. I tend to agree with you. He would be the guy that I'd be looking to get to. I think Looney looks good at 4,500 on DraftKings, 4,800 on FanDuel. You get the power forward eligibility. He's going to play 20 minutes, and that's probably it, barring anything really crazy. Could he close and play a couple minutes? Yes. Like, he's really good. Don't know if he needs to be out there, though. And you get guys like Damian Jones at no ownership that aren't all that far away from a minutes projection where you pick up a lot of additional ownership.
And less expensive.
Absolutely. Dante DiVincenzo's at 19% ownership on FanDuel. I would run away from that as fast as I possibly could. That seems there's just no reason to do that on a day like today. No idea how many minutes he's going to play. If it's Moses Moody, if it's JaMychal Green, if it's more Kuminga, all of that stuff could happen. More guys on the Warriors that I don't even know yet. Like, you're going to see 11 Warriors at a minimum today.
Yeah, agreed. Kuminga, the reason I mentioned Kuminga specifically, he just, like, I think he fits sort of like everything that you're looking for from Golden State here. Like, if they're going to limit their starters' minutes, obviously that's opening up more minutes for other guys. Kuminga is one of the better bench options in terms of playing basketball and trying to win a game. He's one of the better bench options in terms of flexibility. Like, you can put him in a lot of different lineups and he fits well enough. And he's one of the guys on the bench that, if you're going to just be giving out extra minutes early in the season, you would like him to get them, given that he's one of your younger guys that you're trying to develop. So he kind of just checks like every box for, I mentioned the opening night last year, you got 29 minutes from Lee, you got like 26 from Bielitsa, 23 from Iggy. Kuminga just like checks every box for me, where I would not be surprised at all if he ends up playing similar minutes to the starters here.
How do you feel about Moody at the flat min, shooting guard, small forward as well? He's terrible from a per minute basis.
Yeah, he's terrible from a per minute basis. I think the floor is pretty low, but I do still think there's a ceiling there, because like he could just certainly play more minutes than we're expecting. I feel more comfortable going to Kuminga because he's the better point per minute guy.
Yeah. And then we haven't said his name. James Wiseman's 5,700 on DraftKings, 5K on FanDuel. I don't really know how to justify that one. There's just not enough playing time.
That's why I hadn't said his name.
Yeah. Moody's just the tricky one on DK because of the price tag. Like, how often is Kendrick Nunn beating Moses Moody today in a comparison of ownership? I think that's where it starts to get interesting. If you need to just swap out 3K guys in a lineup to really change up your ownership profile. I mean, I don't know what they're going to be doing here with Moody. This is fascinating. Like, there's very little worse than we're going to be sweating the the third and fourth quarter of a Warriors team where we, and the Lakers to a degree, we don't really know what that bench is going to look like. And that's going to be what hands out 200K on both sites.
Yep.
I love it. Who's horrible? Kuminga has been horrible. 0.95 fantasy points per minute, something in that neighborhood. Team Kuminga. And they love him too. He's only small forward eligible on FanDuel. That's kind of a bummer, which makes it really crazy to me that he's pulling 22% ownership. I don't love that. A quarter of, or call it 1/5 of the lineups having Kuminga. That feels like something I could be a little bit lighter on.
By the way, not to say that this is going to happen, but to sort of, and I think, Stephen Leibowitz mentioned it in chat. Kerr came out and said that the starters can't play 30 minutes because they're not conditioned or whatever. Kuminga played 30 minutes in their last preseason game. Like, he physically can. He just did it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know what to do for their minutes. Like, I gave Kuminga 16. I think 10 to 24 is like very realistically on the table.
Yeah.
I have no feel.
Red Skittles said Moody fits the exact profile that I just laid out for Kuminga. Yeah, he does. Except for, I think Kuminga's just ahead of Moody.
Yeah. Moody's like the new Otto Porter, I think. And we'll see how that ends up shaking out. I mean, Kuminga is a better, like, all things equal, Kuminga is going to project way ahead of Moses Moody.
Right.
Just
default. Because if you give them similar minutes projections, you're going to get almost double the projection for Kuminga.
Callie Martian wants to know if Wiseman can start. No, 0% chance that 1% chance that Wiseman can start. That's Looney's job. I think he started every game last year. I could be wrong.
Wiseman was also out.
Yeah, but I mean every game, not like sometimes Looney started, and has been on the Warriors his entire career. Yeah, 80. Yeah, he started 80 games last year. They're just not starting Wiseman. All right.
No, we got like not starting.
No, we got like one more minute before we want to get out of here. So I'm just going to hit you with the normal question. Who are some of your favorite plays for today?
In tournaments, Kuminga. If he's going to be 8 to 9%, I really like getting there. Embiid, LeBron, Davis, obviously. Kendrick Nunn for value.
Okay. For FanDuel, for me, Embiid at the top of the heap. Klay Thompson, which is not something that I was expecting to say. Draymond, although I'm a little nervous. And then if I'm paying down, Kendrick Nunn, PJ Tucker, Lonnie Walker. 943 people, just shy of 300 likes. You guys are slipping on the hitting that like button, but I'm gonna allow it for right now. It's nice to see close to 1,000 people in here. We will be back. Adam and I will be back for the deeper dive later today. Contenders videos are already posted. Go check out my top 10 DraftKings and FanDuel plays if you're interested. Adam, do you have anything else coming out today?
I have NBA tournament videos coming out today. I'll also be doing the NBA injury report videos that I did last year. Not sure if I have one of those today because I don't think there's any injuries to talk about. But in general, I will also have that out in the afternoon.
There we go, everybody. Keep your eyes peeled to everything we've got going on. Thank you for being here. It's nice to have the NBA back. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you later tonight, 5:30. NFL show coming up next.